Hello, welcome to Shamanism, Metaphysics, and Grace. I am the lucky student of shamanism who has studied under Jyoti Wind for quite some time now and am very grateful that she has agreed to do this series with me. And I'll be playing the role of Inquirer. My name's Lauren Hubele. I am a teacher of the medicine from trees called Gemmotherapy. And I want to introduce you to my friend and mentor, Jyoti Wind. Jyoti, welcome.
Thank you, Lauren. Good morning.
Good morning. Jyoti, let's open this space up for everyone as you would in your own practice.
I'm going to do a simplified version rather than standing and facing the directions. I'm calling in the guardians, the grandmothers and grandfathers of each of the directions, the east, the south, the west, the north. I'm calling in Grandfather Sky and ask for his blanket of protection. I am calling in Grandmother Earth, who is the keeper of compassion and mercy. And I am calling in that deep wisdom keeper in our hearts, our human hearts here today. May everyone hold space.
Jyoti.
Thank you.
Jyoti, things are a little crazy out there.
Yes.
What's happening in our world today?
Well, funny you should ask. So Mercury is slowing down to begin its retrograde period on May 11th. And it will be retrograde until, let's see, it's in Gemini and it goes back into Taurus and it will go direct on June 3rd and then take usually 2 weeks to catch up. So after the 18th of June, we'll start into new territory. So what this means, Mercury is in Gemini retrograding back into Taurus, and we're slowing down in our cognition, in our communication, even though there may feel pressure inside to get things done before this happens, just a natural inclination, like I need to finish up loose ends here before who knows. And so we're looking at the details of things. And then as Mercury goes back into Taurus, it's going to have us look again at our values and priorities and what's really important to us and how do we practically apply what we know and what we've been learning. And so it gives us pause. I mean, every Mercury retrograde, and there's 3 per year for 3 weeks at a time. That's not counting the shadow of the retrograde for several weeks, the retrograde period, the direct period where it's catching up. It equals to about 7 weeks each time until we're out of it. And then that happens 3 times a year. That's 21 weeks. That's almost half of the year that we're dealing with Mercury's cycle. Yet it is to draw us inside. I mean, that's its purpose. We're a very outward looking culture. And at least for 3 weeks, 3 times a year, Mercury issues an invitation for us to go inside, to access our own wisdom, to be self reflective, to be meditative. And so at least we have that pull. Most people lose checks in the mail or forget that they purchased something, or there's a misunderstanding in communication. Hey, I'll meet you over here and you're over there, that kind of thing. And so misunderstandings are very much up during a Mercury retrograde period because it's to draw us inside. to get to know ourselves better. I mean, that's the purpose of it. A lot of times, if you have a project, it working on a project can make you very mindful. You're sitting with yourself, you're sitting with what you're doing. So sometimes having a project ready to go also can facilitate that.
Yeah.
So there's not so much confusion.
This that you brought up about communication is beautiful and timely. My husband and I were just having this conversation about lately, in the last 48 hours, that we're both so much in our own head that we're skipping steps in communicating with the other person. So we might drop something in a conversation thinking that other person's been in our head all this time, but we've never spoken it out loud. And then it causes this friction. Like, wait a minute, you haven't told me about that.
Yes.
Would you
Yes.
say that's an example of what you're talking about?
Yes. Yes. It's an example, one of many.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's looking at those assumptions as you know, as one of many that we make about things, and then all of a sudden the surprise and the shock comes, like, yeah, we're not on the same page.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
and,
let's talk
and the
about.
other sorry, and the other piece is that also on May 11th, when Mercury turns retrograde, Jupiter is going to enter Aries. And so Jupiter's been in Pisces for a number of months, went very quickly through Pisces, and is in its last degree right now, and will be entering Aries on May 11th as well. And if you notice that there's some fomenting going on in the culture politically and women's rights and things like that, this Jupiter in Aries might just galvanize things to, as a woman's statement I read the other day, to an incandescent level. And I thought, you know, some things are red or red hot, but incandescent takes it to a much deeper and intense level of color, of fire. Jupiter is moving into Aries, a fire sign, and may for the next 6 months really galvanize people to express just how they feel about certain political issues.
Wow. How might that look on a personal level and one-to-one relationships?
Well, you might find yourself saying things that you have been meaning to say but never quite got to,
Mm.
you know? You might find yourself flush with new ideas and new ways of doing things and of looking at things. And because Aries likes to be the first kid on their block to have, to know, to do. And they're the first sign. They're the ones that get things moving. That's the energy that sparks and gets things off the ground. And so they're the starters. They're the people who are the innovators, the ones who are bringing new concepts, new ideas to the table. So it's time for pioneering. It's time for dangling one's toes off the edge of the cliff to see what lives there. It's very much risk taker energy.
Cool. Cool. Seems like we need that right now.
We do. We do. Right now, this weekend, Mother's Day weekend, Jupiter's at the end of Pisces, the same degree as the Pleiades. And in some parts of astrology, it's considered a degree of sorrow because one is letting go. One is realizing things might not be the way one thinks they are. And so one is kind of letting go of the old dream, and then Jupiter coming right in with Aries, entering Aries, saying, here's the new dream.
Hmm. Hmm. You know, I love hearing you speak of this in the way you do, Jyoti, because so often things we read, you know, Mercury in retrograde is a negative thing. oh gosh, this is going to happen. But the truth is, we go through these cycles, right? They're neither good nor bad, they just are.
Exactly.
And it seems to me the more we can understand, we can work with that particular energy.
Yes, it's like the door of opportunity opens and one can jump through, and take advantage of what's being presented, whether it's personal insight into something that needs to be let go of, or whether it's realizing that it's just time for something else. And with Jupiter moving into Aries, I mean, I would think that there's a myriad of choices that will show up of the things that are waiting in the wings to be brought in to keep us moving forward individually and collectively.
But last time we were together, we talked about your practices and having a daily practice and what that might look like for folks. I wonder if there are some practical things listeners might do as we are in this particular time, knowing the energies are such. What might be something to do that would help me get the most benefit from this time period?
I think that just having some type of a meditative practice. I mean, you can have an active meditation practice like walking or archery, Zen archery. You can have a sitting practice, a breathing practice, a writing practice, almost like automatic writing, where you just let go of all the grammar stops and everything and just write continuously, stream of consciousness writing. I mean, there's many different forms of being with yourself, and I think anytime you can make room for being with yourself in a non-judgmental, self-caring way is helpful, because there's nowhere else to go except inside, you know
Well, that's enough, right? That's enough right there if we only do
Yes.
that. Exactly.
Yes.
So, as I was listening to you talk about this from an astrological perspective, I'd love to think about knowing what we know of the shamanistic view. How might we integrate these two ideas? We've got this happening astrologically from a shamanistic view. What else could we add to this?
Do you want to define that a little more, that question?
Yeah. I guess maybe let me rewind a little bit. I mean, you've been practicing both of these for 50 years in your life. They're not separate to you, or are
No, it's all me.
it's
I
all
mean,
you? Right,
yes,
right.
yes.
So, how would if a shaman approach Mercury in retrograde?
That's a good point. So from a practitioner, shamanic practitioner point of view, I might do um, more mindfulness meditation, getting out of my own way, breathing. Um, I might do more ceremony,
Mm,
you know, and make sure, I'm keeping with that calling in the directions every day, mindfully asking or mindfully offering my thanks and gratitude, not always asking for help, but sometimes just offering my gratitude and my thanks and my honoring, because that takes you in. You have to stop, the busy mind and the busy schedules and everything, just to take a moment and just be with that energy, that honoring, that giving gratitude to specific directions, specific place, and it stops you. Just sitting and doing that square meditation, they call it, or the box meditation. I had no idea it had current labels to it, but or names, but it's just breathing in for 4 and holding for 4 and breathing out for 4 and holding the breath out for 4. And it calms you. It just calms you to breathe in and hold and let go and hold out. And then just start that cycle again. It's just for a few minutes. It just stops you in your tracks, basically.
Well, Jyoti, that certainly answers what I was asking. And now I think I would go back again to this role of service to our community as a shamanic practitioner. And we're approaching a time where there is, going to be this a lot arising energetically and possibly in this turmoil. And how can we as a shamanic practitioner hold space for this? So I'm hearing you say I can hold space by doing it for myself first, always, right?
Always,
Always.
always.
And then holding space for the community, for the greater good through ceremony or ritual.
Ceremony, ritual, prayer, creative visualization. It was interesting because one of the women in the shamanic group was going to near Ukraine and bringing GoFundMe funds for the women and children nearby that were being housed, so that for food, so that they could be fed. And it's interesting because I started at the end of like the shamanic study groups, or at the end of some classes, I would ask everyone in the class or the group to just take a few minutes, and we would meditate and send the light that we had been enlivening in ourselves during the course of the hour, and send it as a blanket, a blanket of love and caring to that whole area of the world, whether from Russia to Ukraine to Odessa to those parts of the world. And when she was there and delivering the funds, and buying food, one of the women told her that in leaving Ukraine and coming to this safe city where she was, it had felt like a blanket of safety. And I thought, oh, that is so cool. That is so cool that that woman felt what was being sent, not just by me and the people I'm working with, but I'm sure by many, many, many millions of other people. And I'm glad she was able to feel that safety.
That's a beautiful example and a powerful one, and a reminder of just this simple act can be sent out into the universe and carried on its own, right? The
Yes,
universe will take care for that.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, lovely. So we're approaching this time. Some ways to work with it is taking time for ourselves,
Hmm.
and then making room for others in that. Is there anything else about this particular time period that I think would be useful for folks to understand or hold space for?
I think the more we love and care for ourselves, and not in an entitled kind of way, but just in a acknowledging way of who we are. I mean, who we really are, and our connections with each other and with deity, the creator. Um, I think that's really important, and that we love ourselves. We love ourselves. I mean, it's an odd thing to not love yourself, and not care for yourself. And so one of the ways that you can care for yourself is by, I believe that we need all of our parts and all of our energy together wherever we stand on the planet, because we may have some very intense decisions to make in our lives, the way things are going. And we need all of our parts available to us, all of our wisdom available, not locked up in some kind of neurotic or wounded place. We need to release that energy because it is just energy, ultimately. So if we can, I'd like to guide us through a guided visualization around accessing the inner child, because the inner child holds the keys to our spontaneity and our creativity. And we want that available to us. Okay, so this is based loosely on a Hakomi way of thinking. So I'd like to lead us through it for our listeners. You're welcome to join me. So I would ask people to just close their eyes for a moment and just let go of the day, having to get this right, and just let that breath go and take with it anything that is not of this moment's possibilities. And so I'd like you to envision in your adult self that you are standing across the street or down the driveway or wherever it was where you grew up. And just take a moment to orient yourself to just standing a little bit apart from that childhood home. Let's say you're on the sidewalk across the street from your house, where you grew up or spent most of your childhood time. And all of a sudden you notice that there's a little girl or little boy peeking out across the street out of the door of the house you grew up in. And that child is just kind of looking at you. Could be 3, could be 4, could be 5 years old. And just all of a sudden, just seeing you and wondering, really curiously, wondering, who is this person? What are they doing there? Why are they staring at the house? Or maybe not even that much thought to it, just being very curious. And this child comes out the door and walks down the steps, if there are steps there, or down the driveway. So she walks down the steps and he or she and lands on the sidewalk across the street from you. And she's still staring at you, wondering who you are. And you cross the street, you go over to her, and you bend down to her level or his level and tell this child, I am your future self who came to get you, who came to bring you with me into our future. And you ask this child, will you come with me? Usually the child says yes. And you take the child by the hand, or if age appropriate, you pick the child up and hold the child in your arms. And you cross the street, walking away from the home, childhood home. And you look back for a moment and both of you wave, to that childhood home and the things that happened there and to the family. She or he is yours now. And then you continue walking into your future. And you promise this child that you will remember them, that you won't forget them. And then you keep that promise. So slowly come back to yourself, having put that child in some part of your inner self. Slowly the child will integrate itself within you and bring you those keys of spontaneity and creativity. But for now, as you come back to yourself, keep your promise and keep time for that child. Swing on a swing if that's what you like to do as a child. Color outside the lines, knowing that that inner child's hand development, muscle coordination is not yet fully developed yet. And so it doesn't have to look like anything. It's just drawing, it's just putting color on paper and being very gentle with yourself and very kind to yourself. Or if it's a little boy, go buy yourself a small little truck or something that he liked to play with, that you like to play with as a child, you know, an early birthday present or whatever. But be with that child in an ongoing manner. And it'll eventually, that part of you will eventually integrate itself into who you are and restore your playfulness and your creativity and give you more of a feeling of wholeness and confidence and the ability to make the choices you need to make.
That's such a simple yet profound practice, Jyoti. Thank you. It was nice to revisit it again. I've often heard in my practice from folks that compartmentalize that child, that when bad things happened,
Mm-hmm.
and yet they're carrying it around, and they will describe it's almost like this weighted bag.
Yeah.
And then what happens over time is there's this fear of opening up the bag, like it will be like Pandora's box, and I may not be big enough or full enough or mature enough to handle what comes out, so I keep it all in that bag.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet, once you bring that child, him or her, to your conscious present, you know, and it's like updating your files, you know, it's like updating yourself. It's like, okay, another piece we've reclaimed that was held in pain and woundedness, and aside from our heart's love. We held it separate from our heart's love. And as soon as we can bring that back into ourself and our wholeness, the more whole we are.
Beautiful. I love that, updating our files.
Mm-hmm.
We do that in so many other ways in our life, but why not in our own psyche and affecting our spiritual, emotional, and physical body?
Yeah.
Not carrying that weight is a gift to our physical body.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. It
yeah,
it doesn't hold the energy any longer of being that drain.
yeah. Yeah, I love this practice, and particularly that you shared it today as we're inviting folks to prepare and be awake and aware and connected with themselves during these weeks ahead,
Mm-hmm.
as Mercury moves its way through its progress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think being aware like this is very empowering. Again, going back to so much we read on the internet and from those that share in the know about this time period, it's shared from this victim perspective, like, well, this is going to happen to you.
Right.
And what I hear you doing is completely flipping that and allowing us the power to step into how I might greet that
Mm-hmm.
and grow from the experience.
And maybe making one's own choices about how you want to see it show up. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Anything else you'd like to add to this beautifully rich tapestry you've woven with me this morning?
Um, I don't think so. Other than just making time in your day-to-day life, just making time to listen and to trust that things will unfurl in its own way, including your life. You may not know exactly where you're going. I feel like we're on a need to know basis with the universe right now, and it seems to deem us not needing to know. And so it's just trusting one foot in front of the other and doing your own personal work while we're looking to see what the next phase is going to look like.
Lovely. Jyoti, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Lauren.
Jyoti, where can people learn more about your work?
I have a web page. It's jyotywindastrology.com.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.